In today's story, I want to take you through something that unfolded so unexpectedly and escalated so quickly that even now, when I replay the moments in my head, I feel like I am reliving one of those viral neighborhood drama videos that start off mild and suddenly erupt into chaos, except this wasn't a story I watched online while casually scrolling through my feed. This happened to me in real life, right outside the home I worked tirelessly to earn, and it became one of the strangest confrontations I've ever had with anyone, let alone a stranger who believed she had the authority to decide whether I belonged in my own house. I had moved into this neighborhood only 6 months earlier, after years of grinding through long shifts, skipping unnecessary expenses, saving every spare dollar, and teaching myself how to stretch a paycheck farther than most people thought possible. And finally, after all that effort, signing my name on a mortgage that felt like a trophy representing every sacrifice I had made along the way. My house wasn't some mansion, but it was mine, with its slightly crooked mailbox, uneven driveway, and a lawn that constantly looked like it needed just one more hour of care to become perfect. To me, it was a symbol of adulthood, independence, and everything I had been building toward. The neighborhood itself had the kind of atmosphere you'd expect in a quiet suburban area. Families walking dogs in the evenings, retired couples tending to their gardens with the dedication of Olympic athletes, kids playing with chalk on the sidewalks, and a sense of familiarity between neighbors who had lived there for years. But like most neighborhoods, it also had her, the one resident, whose personality was loud enough to be felt even if you hadn't met her. Yet the unofficial judge, jury, and self-appointed neighborhood enforcement officer who believed every front yard, driveway, and mailbox somehow fell under her jurisdiction. People referred to her as the street's inspector, but behind closed doors, everyone simply called her Karen. I had seen her before, though never up close, usually standing in her yard with her arms tightly folded, watching people with the same intensity as a motion-activated security camera, and occasionally yelling at teenagers riding their bikes to fast past her house. She had that unmistakable haircut, short, stiff, and aggressively maintained, as well as the kind of sunglasses that sit on the top of the head, like a permanent crown of authority. She didn't smile often, or perhaps ever, and something about her presence made you feel like she was constantly evaluating whether you met the invisible standards she believed she had the power to enforce. My actual interaction with her began on a warm Saturday morning, a day so peacefully ordinary that I never imagined it would turn into a story worth sharing with the world. I had just returned from visiting my parents, and my car was packed with luggage, groceries, a few work folders, and a brand new toolbox I had bought to fix the kitchen cabinet door that had recently decided to become unhinged, literally, not metaphorically. As I opened the trunk and began unloading everything, I felt a strange sense of being watched, the kind of sensation that pricks the back of your neck like a cold fingertip. And when I turned slightly to the side, I spotted her standing right at the edge of my driveway. She wasn't walking by. She wasn't out for a morning stroll. She was simply there, arms crossed tightly, posture rigid, expression unreadable, acting as if she were surveying something suspicious unfolding before her eyes. I tried to be friendly, because that's how I was raised, so I offered a polite good morning. But she didn't return. It didn't even acknowledge the greeting, choosing instead to slowly tilt her head, while narrowing her eyes at me as though she were trying to figure out whether I had escaped from a museum exhibit labeled young adult, not supposed to own property yet. After a long, uncomfortable pause, she finally asked, "Can I ask what exactly you're doing?" in a tone that came out sharp, suspicious, and dripping with a sense of entitlement so heavy that it practically weighed down the air around. "U.S." Trying to keep my composure, I calmly replied, "I live here," expecting the conversation to end there, because, really, what else could she possibly want? But instead of accepting that simple fact, she looked at me with a mixture of disbelief and annoyance, stepping closer as if getting within arm's reach would magically reveal hidden answers. "You live here," she repeated, pointing directly at my house like she was identifying a suspect in a lineup. "This house? Yours?" "Yes," I said, extending the word slightly to signal that I was confused by her tone. She leaned back, placing one hand on her hip as her lips tightened into a thin line. "Are your parents home?" she asked, lowering her voice as if she were catching me in some elaborate lie. "Did they leave you here alone while they travel?" I blinked, truly unsure whether she was being serious. "No," I replied slowly. "I bought this house by myself." She looked like she had just heard the world's most unbelievable fairy tale. "You bought a house?" she said, almost whispering as if processing the shock. "At your age?" I had no idea what age she thought I was. Maybe 12, judging by her reaction, But before I could even begin to respond, she took out her phone with a speed and determination that made me think she was about to summon a superhero team rather than dial a number. "I am calling the police," she announced loudly, turning slightly so her voice would project down the street. "Because you cannot just break into someone else's home and start unloading stolen items in broad daylight." I stared at her, stunned by the accusation. "You're calling 911 because I'm unloading my own groceries?" I asked, but she ignored me entirely. "Already connected to the operator." "Yes, I'm reporting a burglary in progress," she said, exaggerating every word. "Yes, right now. He's still here. He has bags and suitcases. I'm looking at him." I stood there helplessly watching her fabricate an entire crime scene from thin air. 10 minutes later, a police car rolled up, and instead of panicking, I felt a strange combination of embarrassment and frustration because I knew exactly how ridiculous this situation was going to sound to the responding officers. Karen practically sprinted toward them with a frantic wave, yelling, "Officers, right here. He's the one. He's pretending to live in that house." The officers, one male and one female, approached me calmly and respectfully, asking for identification and any proof of ownership. And within minutes after I showed them my mortgage documents, closing papers, and driver's license, it became perfectly clear to them that I was indeed the rightful owner of the home. When we walked back outside, Karen was waiting with the kind of expectant energy a person has when they believe they were absolutely right and can't wait to be validated. Instead, the officers told her plainly that I was the legal homeowner and that there was no issue whatsoever. Karen's face shifted from confident smugness to absolute disbelief before melting into outrage. "That can't be right," she shouted. "He's too young. He must be lying. Forging papers. People like him don't own houses like these." The officers shut her down politely but firmly, telling her to stop making false reports and warning her that future calls like this could lead to consequences. She stormed away, muttering about the neighborhood going downhill, and I thought that was it. I thought the nightmare had ended, but I was wrong. Over the next week, Karen became obsessed with proving I was some kind of fraud. She stood outside pretending to film me every time I walked to my car. She knocked on neighbors' doors asking if they had noticed anything unusual about the boy staying in that house. She even cornered my Amazon driver, demanding to know how often he delivered suspicious packages to my address. The final straw came when I found a fake homeowners association violation taped to my door. A poorly typed letter accusing me of unauthorized occupancy, printed in bold red letters as if dramatic formatting could make it legitimate. I contacted the real HOA president, who told me not only was the letter fake, but Karen had already been warned multiple times for harassing new residents. Eventually, after enough complaints piled up from the neighborhood, not just from me, but from nearly everyone she had bothered over the years, Karen was hit with official HOA fines and restrictions. She responded with her trademark public tantrum, screaming in her driveway at 7 in the morning about how she was being targeted for protecting the community. But the damage to her reputation and her standing in the neighborhood was finally too much for her to recover from. Just a few weeks later, a for sale sign quietly appeared on her lawn, and the day she moved out, I stood by my front window drinking coffee, watching her boxes get loaded into a truck, and feeling an overwhelming wave of relief wash over me as the street slowly returned to the peaceful place it had been before she made herself the self-appointed guardian of other people's property. And with her departure, for the first time since I moved in, my home, finally felt truly, completely mine.